Welcome in. It's the Second Cut podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. We are mega previewing the Canadian Open. We are going north of the border. We've got storylines. We've got the best bets. We've got lots of things to cover. Greg DuCharme is here. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Rick. Excited. Hello, Mark. Excited for the RBC Canadian Open this week. I'm really excited for the U.S. Open next week. So it's kind of the last tune-up. I'm looking forward to it. But the Canadians, first of all, love golf. And I think that they have an underrated accent. I mean, the South African accent seems to just get all the credit.
Mm-hmm. It really does. you know, DuCharme could be like French Canadian.
Oh, yeah. It is, as a matter of fact.
So
yes, I can give you a little lesson on that if you'd like.
Please, we're ready.
So there's a town in France called Charme, and my ancestors, as the legend has it, moved from Charme to Canada, and they were known as of Charme.
Yeah,
DuCharme, and that's why there's a capital C in my name as well.
I think you should call it Charme, just to add a little zing, a little zizz to it.
Flair. Yeah, a little flair. I get called that all the time.
That's Mark Immelman there. Hello, Mark.
Hi, I'm just Immelman from South Africa, so I'm not as cool, but apparently the accent adds like 10 IQ points.
At least.
Yeah.
This is a very small town, Greg, if I found the right one. Is that right?
I don't know very much about it, but apparently, yes.
Charme.
Smaller because my people left.
Well, apparently a lot of people left because they have not. If I have found the correct Charme, which is in southwestern France, it has not had more than 500 people in the city limits for at least 70 years.
500?
Okay, now look, if we got French fans listening, they're not going to be happy if we're calling their town Charme. I'm certain it's Charme or Charmois or something. Yes?
Yeah, that would make it more French sounding, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm not certain of much, Mark, but you are probably correct. In that, yeah, it looks pretty. I don't know if I have the right one, but it looks pretty small, Greg.
That's a tiny town.
It's hardly a town. It's a village.
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, that's I guess, as they say, don't forget where you came from.
That's right. We are rocking and rolling for this week. I've got a lot of stuff on the docket. I don't even know where to start. I'm so excited, but I think that we should probably shape up the U.S. Open field because we are almost there. We are nearly complete on Oakmont. I guess there's a chance that somebody could play their way in this week, but the longest day in golf has been completed. All the final qualifying locations have been finalized, and I'll just point out a couple of notes here. And Mark, we'll start here with you. The Columbus playoff, that's Columbus, Ohio, was probably the most star-studded, a 5-for-1 playoff where Cam Young outlasted Max Homa, Ricky Fowler, Eric Cole, and Chase Johnson to punch his ticket, meaning Homa, Fowler, Cole, and Johnson all on the outside looking in.
And if you had held a gun to my head and said, okay, who's going to win this playoff? He might have been the second last guy I picked of the 5 of them. But anyhow, kudos to Cam. Look, he's quietly been playing better. I honestly thought that Ricky Fowler was going to make it through, as I think I'd mentioned on Sunday night when I talked with him Sunday morning. He looked very cool and very calm with the game, and actually put a video of the golf swing that I got of him on social media, and it just looked good and free and sort of uninterrupted to me. So I was kind of had fingers crossed for him. But anyhow, it's the nature of the game. And I guess it's the beauty and the irony of the US Open. They call it democratic. And you got some big names that won't be playing because they have not earned their way. And in a strange sort of way, if you want to keep then delving along that sort of a mining that rabbit hole, if you will, that's sort of the argument for, less membership or less exempt players on the PGA Tour. Yes. But, you ask for that and then they're casualties like we've just seen. So sort of sad for Ricky, but congratulations to Cam Young. Well done.
Yeah, the final qualifying, Greg, I mean, you have literally everything from PGA Tour players, major champions, Corn Ferry Tour players, high school kids.
How about that guy, 63. Gee whiz.
Accountants, delivery men, literally everything. It is merit based indeed.
Yeah, and merit based on a very small sample size, right? Based on 36 holes. Because you could look at it and say, well, if it's merit based, then Ricky Fowler and Max Homa would get in over a dentist, over a high school player. They have earned more merit throughout their career. But this is a simple sprint, a 36-hole challenge where you get a luck of the draw. It depends on who's in your section, right? Who's qualifying in the same place you are, how many spots are available. So it becomes a little bit challenging. The cool aspect, well, there are two. One is the coverage of it, I think, is great for a Monday night. I loved Golf Channel's coverage last night. The second would be, you think about what was his name who shot 63. I can't think of it right now, but
I'll find it for you.
Yeah. I thinking about a player like that who's heading to Georgia. I know he's heading to the University of Georgia. I wonder how they found him. So
Mason Howell.
Mason Howell. Okay. All right. So Mason Howell shoots 63. He's going to make a U.S. Open start. There's going to be a day when Mason Howell's a known name, and you'll look back, at least if you don't remember it outright, and say, oh, he's played in the U.S. Open before. It's the case of a Scotty Scheffler. On the women's side, Lexi Thompson played in the U.S. Open at a very young age. So it allows players to go out there and make a name for themselves and make a start. It's kind of every childhood dream. I dreamed of qualifying for the U.S. Open and actually winning it. And for political reasons, that never happened.
Well, what were the political reasons in which that never happened? In which you did not win the U.S. Open?
I just like to blame politics. That it has nothing to do with it. It's all performance based.
Yeah, just blame the government. That's fine.
Yeah.
Tom brings up a pretty good question here, and it was kind of what Greg was talking about. So Tom says, "Can anybody tell me why a player would choose to play against all the PGA guys at Columbus and not play elsewhere against lesser players?" And Mark, I guess it's a couple of things. A lot of the guys are already there because of the Memorial. They don't have to trek somewhere else. It's also why you see the Ontario qualifier has been pretty popular in the past.
Yeah.
But I believe the number of spots, I don't know how they do it, but it's based on, is it the field size, the field strength, the combination of both?
I know it's field strength. And then I guess the amateurs or the dentists, as you call them, or whatever, that are playing at these venues, as far as I'm concerned, it's a question of pure economics. Not everyone can afford to jump on a plane and go and play a qualifier down in South Florida or in Georgia because there's fewer players in the entry list. But according to the field sizes too, that also has a say-so in how many spots there are. But at the PGA Tour venues, in this case, Ontario and Columbus, there are always more spots, and it's sort of, to try and give the PGA Tour players a bit more of a chance. But you go where you can get in, and you go where you can afford to get to, and that's sort of the beauty of it. But also, if you're living in Columbus and surrounds, or in Ohio, and you've got to go play against Max Homa and company, that's not a fun challenge. But at least, if you beat them, you can go, well, I've already beaten these guys, so maybe we'll go and do some damage there in the big show.
Columbus was 66 for 7 spots. Ontario, same, 66 for 7. Then you get places like Valencia, California, 84 players for just 4 spots. So that is determined based on, I guess, size and strength. The other, there was a ton of qualifiers, Greg, but the other one I loved was the Ontario qualifier, because I think I've got the entire world covered here. Here's who got through: Kevin Velo, Nicholas Norgard, Matt Wallace, Thorbjorn Olesen, Mark Hubbard, Victor Perez, Emiliano Grillo. That is like the entire globe I just got from that qualifier.
Argentina, France, the U.S.,
Norway.
Norway.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
England.
Denmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very global. So it was definitely a strong qualifier as well, which makes sense. You know, you kind of had clearly the next level. Like everybody used to go to Columbus. Columbus used to get like 30 spots or 15 spots, and it kind of decreased over the years. And when the Memorial goes down to a signature event, so the field size gets limited, and many of the players that are playing in that are also already exempt for the U.S. Open. It raised the Canadian Open, because so many of those guys now they're not at Muirfield Village. They're heading up to Canada the next week. So it makes sense. You also have in May, Dallas, which is right alongside, I believe it's the Monday after the PGA, right before the Charles Schwab Challenge. So that becomes another opportunity for PGA Tour players to go get starts. But on that point that you were bringing up earlier about, you know, where you go, I have done this before. You put in, you rank your spots that you'd like to go. You know, 1, 2, 3. I'd like to go to New Jersey because it's closest. I'd like to go to, you know, wherever the next closest are. And then usually you'll get into your top choice, but it doesn't always work out that way. So, because you can't have everybody avoiding the PGA Tour players.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, I think this year this has been reduced, but some guys have the philosophy of the more spots, the better. You know, if there's 14 spots at a certain venue, like there used to be, even though they're PGA Tour players, that might be a really good chance for me. Whereas if I got 2 spots, you know, I somebody gets hot and beats me, I kind of lose out. So there's a couple different philosophies when you're choosing the sectional location.
The other side note there, Mark, with Cam Young winning that playoff, is Max Homa is not in the U.S. Open. Now he was on the green in 2 on a par 5 late in his round, 3 putts for par, which probably is, I mean, it's 36 holes. You could find any one stroke, but that's probably the thing that he will look back on, gets him into a playoff, and then he could not get out of that playoff. I already mentioned that Cam Young takes it down.
Yeah, honestly, I was traveling yesterday, so I didn't see a lot of the footage, but I did see enough to notice that Max Homa was carrying his own golf bag.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if that was a 36-hole deal. Please help me out there. But
seemed to be that he had it for all 36.
Well, he's gone up in my estimations then, because look, 36 holes is a bear, and then carrying your own golf bag, it feels like he was back in college, I'm sure. So that was a big effort by Max, and sad that it would come down to that, but it's the reality of golf, you know. Now that one shot could be, you know, the difference between not just success and failure, but a change in somebody's year. I mean, this, if you look at the other side of the coin, could be Cam Young's springboard. Because remember, this Cam Young, just a few years ago, finished runner-up in a few major championships, and we were all crowning him a future major champion. Then the game fell on hard times. Now he's in qualifying and makes it through. So who knows? This may be, you know, that little fork in the road where he's gone in the right direction now with some confidence and parlays this into a big finish and maybe a good finish to the end of this year.
I've been told that every golf shot makes someone happy and someone sad.
I didn't want to say it, but you're right.
Well, in professional competitive golf, at least.
Yeah.
Big eye. Listen, when you're playing your member guest, you will see that ring true. I promise you.
I love that. We are potting through right now. So if you want to support the show, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can retweet us. You can leave us a 5-star rating or review. You can hop on Patreon and donate. We've got some cool things that go along with it. I want to change course here before we get to the Canadian Open, because Oliver on Patreon.
Rick, forgive me. I have sent some of the goodies from Truist. One is to a guy in Finland, and we're struggling. It didn't come. And I went to UPS. They wouldn't support me, so I'm going to have to go to FedEx, I guess, because we're a PGA Tour property. But I haven't got around to that. And then there was a guy, I think it was, that won, but we still don't have his address. So, Mike, if you're listening, please email the address to Armina.
Yes.
So we can get your T-shirt off to you.
Mike, send your email in or send your address in so we can get it out.
Come on, Mike.
Wow, Finland. Oh my gosh, we are worldwide, are we not?
Yeah, you Mr. Worldwide.
Oliver asks a fun little question here. So he says, given inflation over the next 20 years of his career, could Scottie Scheffler earn $1 billion in prize money? Now, Oliver points out that he's already made $87 million in 3 years. I will pull up the career earnings, but do you guys remember, and I don't know if I'm making this up or not, but when the PGA Tour was responding to Live Golf, and the very first time that Jay Monahan laid out what the new signature events were going to be and the new payouts were going to be, there were examples of career earnings. And one of them was something like Jim Furyk's career. If Jim Furyk's career started now, he would have made $650 million. And that stood out to me. Do we remember that?
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. I remember having a conversation with one of the executives when, it was that real tender time when we were all waiting for the next big dog to leave and head over to Live. And I was told about this presentation where they met with all of their superstar membership and said, look, we have forecast if you stay, if you play like you've been playing, what you're likely to make. And these numbers were astronomical. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, there's no guarantee because you might get injured. You might be making ravioli and then do yourself in for a little while and then come back and win a few big events. Whereas the guys who jump ship, they got the guaranteed money, but now that spigot is closing a little bit because now with contracts running out, it's been said publicly that they're not getting new re-up figures. They're all renegotiating deal, but there's not the big upfront money. So I think in the end, if you look at it, whereas the PGA Tour is meritorious, you got to earn the money. These guys like a Scheffler, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes something stupid like that. It's ridiculous how much money they're making.
Well, I'll just point this out, Greg. So this is crazy to me. I have not looked at the career money list in a long time. So Tiger Woods, number one, $121 million. Rory McIlroy, number two, $104 million. Now, I believe this is also removed Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson. Those guys are no longer on this list, but we've got Tiger, we've got Rory. Scottie Scheffler is already third on the all-time money list at $86 million. That Jim Furyk, who would have made in these new projections $650 million, Scottie has already passed that. Jim Furyk's at $71 million. I cannot believe he's made this much money in his career.
Oh my gosh. And it doesn't include FedEx Cup bonuses, or Comcast Business. That's official money. It is insane. But let's just think about this. All right. $1 billion. So he has made, what was it? What was the number? Let's say 80 million in the last 3 years, just for a round number. Okay. So if every 6 years he makes like 160 million, you're talking about in 12 years, 320 million at this level. Now, I know he said inflation. So I kind of have a belief that what we've seen on the PGA Tour because of Live for the last 4 years or whatever it is a little over, like it's a little beyond what it probably should be. And I don't see there being another huge jump. Like this isn't it. We haven't seen an inflation, a rate of a 2% increase over a period of time, right? All of a sudden, there's just way more money, like in the drop of a hat. How often is that going to happen? I don't see it happening again in the near term. I would be very surprised. Things would be going very well if it did. So that being said, I think $1 billion in official money is a lot. You start to consider like equity and SSG and FedEx Cup earnings. Like it would not surprise me if he became a billionaire the way Tiger is. It would surprise me if he earned $1 billion in official on-course earnings.
Yeah, I wasn't listening. I was, thinking of all in, because you're right, Greg, with sponsorships and other deals and incentive, because all of them have these incentivized base arrangements. And then you add to it the value of their retirement as well, because I think it's at 150 cuts, it's guaranteed. And I'm hearing guys that don't play anymore that are in broadcast that have done this, that they're drawing a really handsome monthly check in retirement from the tour. So, yeah, I would think with all the ancillary stuff, it's possible. Official money would be a stretch, but all these guys, they make their real money off the golf course. That's where they do the big hits.
Yeah, Eddie's made 83 million in the last 3 years on the course.
Yeah, the Nike deal I'm sure pays pretty well, and yeah, but I mean he's on pace to be the official all-time career money leader in like 2 years.
It's crazy, and I want to add this too, because last week Memorial, you've got the stars out there, and the Columbus fans will let you know who they're pulling for, and Scotty has been criticized for being maybe a little vanilla. He sticks to his thing. Doesn't show much emotion. He just plays good golf. But at every turn, the guy was getting just standing ovations and adored by the fans. And here's this just normal guy who picked up his son with a poopy diaper. And he's like, oh, well, I guess this happens. I think he's becoming beloved. And in a way, the guy that really wasn't as marketable maybe as a Rory, if you look at just the nuts and bolts of it, he is becoming just a star. And wherever Scotty turns, people love him. But what's not to love? I mean, he doesn't have many haters. That's the crazy thing. Where Rory, for argument's sake, is loved, but there's a contingent of folks that don't like Rory very much because he's polarizing in a way. Scotty isn't. And so I think in that sort of a vein, it drives up his commercial value even more.
He's impossible to hate. To hate. So, So Scotty Scheffler, congratulations. You're on pace to become the richest on-course golfer ever. Let's talk about Canada here, gents. The National Open of our friends to the north has been played since 1904. It is the oldest continuously run National Open outside of the Open Championship. These Canadians, they like their hockey.
What's the third oldest?
I'm going to say the U.S. Open. South African Open. I probably should have guessed that first.
Yeah.
I probably should have guessed that first.
Just useless information.
I got another piece of useless information, by the way.
Okay.
I was looking up the history of U.S. Open qualifying, and from what did it start in 1899 or 1895 until 1913? You know how you got into the U.S. Open?
Oh, hold on. You traded horses for your spot.
No, you signed up.
That's it.
Yes, you literally just signed up. Then it started getting too popular, and
you still sign up, and you got to earn your way in. Yeah,
yeah. But it used to be you everybody had to qualify the week of at the site.
Oh wow!
And the first two, the tournament was played over 72 holes in 2 days.
Yep,
the actual U.S. Open. You play 36 day one, 36 day two. That's it. Crazy. The other thing is it was 1924, I believe. The defending champion started getting an exemption. So literally everybody qualified for the first 25 of these things.
That's pretty interesting. There is also, I'm trying to find it. There's a newspaper article. I think it's from like 1929 that lists out all the scratch golfers in the country. And there's like 8 of them or something. Like it's like Francis Ouimet and like 7 other guys.
That's wild.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get my hands on that, but it's something pretty outrageous. Yeah, so the history of National Opens is sick.
That was before vanity handicaps, where all and sundry are scratched because they just finagle the scores they had in. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, there was no reason to have a vanity handicap back then. That's cool.
Now there is. Just ask Joe Musso.
Oh, Joe Musso. The Moose gets the drive-by. Well, we're getting a new venue, TPC Toronto. They have 3 18s on the property. They're going to play the North Course. a lot of different ways we can go here, but Mark, the idea is for this to be basically the semi-permanent host of this event. Nothing official, but that's the plan. Golf Canada, which is the governing body of golf in Canada, is going to move their HQ, their headquarters there. And this, they might shoot off to Glen Abbey. They might shoot off to Oakdale, but they're going to basically use this as their anchor site, if you will.
Yeah, well, they were based at Glen Abbey for the longest time, and hence the Canadian Open was there, and then would bounce away to other golf courses around the area. All I know about it is from a conversation with David Markle last week, who is caddy to Nick Taylor, who grew up very, very close to where these golf courses are. So I said to him, well, what's the place like? And he said, it's sort of typical big golf course. He goes, power is going to play in your favor. The place is long. It's like 7,400 par 70. So he goes, the big bombers are going to have a little bit of an advantage. But it's just one of those spots where it's over a lot of ground, covers a lot of space, and kind of one of those modern golf courses. And so I was like, do you think it was going to play hard? And he said, it has in the past, because they've had a PGA Tour Canada event, I believe, over there. He goes, but if it's receptive with the PGA Tour guys, they'll have their way a little bit. But yeah, I understand it moving there as a TPC property, but it's a long way north of Toronto proper. I said to Nick, I'm like, we're staying downtown, and I heard it's about 45 minutes. And he sort of raised up from hitting balls. This is Taylor, and he goes, traffic, that's going to be longer than an hour. So I'm keen to see what the fan base is that come out there. They're rabid for golf, so I think they'll probably make it. But when we were in places that were in Toronto proper, the fans would come out en masse. So I'm keen to. I'm excited to see. I'm keen to see because it's always one of our favorites to cover. But being so far north of town, sort of rural, I'm interested to see what the response from the fans is going to be.
Well, they showed up in Montreal on that island that had one way in and one way out, and they had no problem getting there. So I think they're going to find a way. This is a relatively new venue, Greg. I think they opened the thing up in 1999 or 2000. They renovated this course over the last couple of years to make it ready for the PGA Tour boys. They've converted 2 of the par 5s to a par 4. So what the scorecard says it's a par 70 at 7,400 yards, but we're just doing a lot of guessing. What have you heard? Boots on the ground, checking out the satellite imagery, all that fun stuff for this week.
Yeah, I've done my fair share of digging in that sense. It looks to be fairly straightforward. I don't think that there's a lot of trickery to the golf course. There's some width. The fairways average about 37 yards wide, but there does seem to be some fescue that comes into play not far off the main rough line. So, I don't think it'll be like a typical Canadian Open where driving accuracy is pretty important. I think you're going to see distance kind of prevail. You're talking about 4 par 4s over 500 yards. 16 and 17 or 517 and 530. And one of the par 4s I didn't even mention is 496. That doesn't even count. So, we're looking at a lot of long par 4s. There's 2 par 3s that are over 220, puts long irons in your hands a lot. And then what I find to be also interesting is the 2 other par 3s are under 160. So you got a great opportunity for a rink hole, potentially see some holes in one there. On one of those 2 holes as well. So I think it looks to be a pretty cool thing. Now, one last piece, when it comes to the layout, 1 and 18 are par 5s. So I'm very curious come the weekend how guys are able to navigate that. 17 holes in a row without a par 5 is, you have potentially a drivable par 4, but that could be a long stretch if it's playing tough. So I'm very, very, very curious about that.
Yeah, the rink hole is back. It'll be a short par 3, Mark. It'll be the 14th hole. It's gonna play about 125 yards. Taylor Pendrith has made an ace there, which shouldn't be a surprise because he has 13 albatrosses or something in his life, which is a ridiculous number. He holds out from everywhere, but this should be an exciting version of the hole where they get to bang on the boards and be raucous there.
Yeah, and Saturday we've got Colt Knost and Amanda Balionis holding court there in the broadcast. And so I asked Colt, I'm like, because in years past, they've both worn hockey jerseys. And Amanda's kind of tries to be the fan favorite, so she'll always wear like the Toronto Maple Leafs or something like that, where Colt he likes to pick arguments with people. And so I'm like, what you got planned? You're going to wear the Stars? And he goes, no, I've got something up my sleeve. So it's going to be fun in the broadcast. It's always a fun hole. I hearken back to when it was at St. George's and the rink hole was like number 15 or 16, maybe. It was an uphill par 3, and it was about a 7-iron for McIlroy. And I had him on Saturday and was making a run, and eventually obviously won the event. And when we left let's call it 15 green, it was not even 20 yards to 16T. And what they had built around 15, which basically had stands right on the edge of the green, and right behind it, there was this platform that you'd walk between the two stands, and the fans could move around freely. And just walking through that tunnel onto the tee, I mean, I still get goosebumps. And then you get to the tee, and these folks are banging on the boards, and they've got the marshals in referees' outfits in the black and whites. And Rory was up. He had just made a birdie. And he gets up there, and this place, bang, 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 bang. Then it falls deadly silent. And Rory gets over the ball, and he sort of regrips a few times and has a few looks. And he took a few peeks before he pulled the trigger. And he hits this beauty up there to about 15 feet. And I'm walking ahead, and I turn around, and I look at him. And I sort of smile, and I go, nice shot. And he actually looked at me, and he goes, glad that's over. So it's I don't think it's like Phoenix, because Phoenix is just gigantic. But in a way, it's like Phoenix because it's intense. And these fans are into it. When you got a toughish shot like it was then, crosswind, because they're going to let you have it if you miss the green, it adds a sweet wrinkle to the event. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I think Saturday with Colton Company out there, that could add some to the broadcast.
I am all for every event having something. Doesn't need to be Phoenix, doesn't need to be, but something. Give me something at every single event. And this is a good one for Canada. Despite these being TPCs, Greg, part of the TPC network, they're public courses. You could play all 3 of them. The most expensive one is $175 USD. I have not converted that to Canadian dollars, but also love that. So we've got a public courses that you can play where the pros play. We've got something unique, and we are going to a sport crazed country. This checks off a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, it really does. And like Mark was saying, they love it and they get fired up for it, especially this time of year. Their winter sports are dwindling out.
Unfortunately, the Leafs are done.
Yeah, and the Leafs are done. Like, what else is there to do? I wouldn't say it's that dramatic, but the sport in Canada has really grown over the last 20 years. And it's extremely popular, and you have a nice contingent of Canadian players out there, and you have some stars like Rory McIlroy who have really taken to Canada and had great success there. And you had Tiger with a very famous shot up in Canada as well, albeit that was back in 2000. So it's been a while since that moment, and Tiger didn't play there very much after, but Rory is committed to it. Some of the other players have committed to it. And of course the Canadians have too. And it's generated a ton of excitement, and it's definitely led to, I think a really good thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be the week before a major either. A lot of guys want to play the week before a major. So it has a nice spot in the schedule as well.
Joseph got on the calculator for me. Thank you very much. $240 Canadian. If you are looking for that conversion from USD. Final nugget here. Luke Clanton is probably going to make some money this week, assuming he can get to the weekend, because he is now a professional. And Greg and I were talking about this before we went hot, Mark. Here's your welcome to the show. Luke Clanton going off at 7:40 a.m. Eastern alongside Ludwig Oberg and Rory McIlroy. Hello, kid.
Yeah, welcome to the big show. Do me a favor, Rick.
Yeah.
Clanton. Say it.
Oh, this is the same thing I do with Terrell Hatton.
Yeah. Hatton.
Luke Clanton. Clanton.
Right.
I'll
Don't worry. I struggle with the word credits. I cannot say credits. Anyway, useless. Yeah, but as far as Luke Clanton goes, look, he's exciting. I've watched him play. I've called him playing in the group of him and Michael Thorbjornsson, final round, John Deere, maybe last year, maybe the year before. And incidentally, John Deere is just re-upped with the tour until 2030 as the sponsor of the John Deere Classic. So good news there. Yeah, but Luke he's good, man. He's electric. He's got a lot of game. I expect him to make a splash. I really do. And it's a great golf course from what I understand for him to start on, because he can move it off the tee. And that's going to be part of the examination this week. So yeah, dive on in the deep end, kiddo. Swim, see how you do.
I'm excited for him, Greg. You know, he was juggling. First off, he's played it. This is not his first PGA Tour event. He's played a major championship. He's had that runner-up finish. He has a couple of top 10s. He's played like 12 or 13 PGA Tour events. This will not be new to him, which I love. But I always felt like, and rightfully so, there was this, you know, he was always focused on, okay, I got to get back to Florida State. I got to make sure, you know, I've got those, what nationals coming up, like all that stuff, right? I've got those events to worry about. Focus no more, young man. This is PGA Tour time.
Yep. This is first day on the new job. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, in his prior experience as an intern, if you will, he has 6 top 20s in those 13 PGA Tour starts.
It's good work experience for sure.
It's very good work experience. And, you know, that's enough of a taste to get a sense for what a player is. And of course, there's the great distance. But what I really like is his ability to perform at a very high level in every area of the game. You know, this is a unpolished but very well-rounded player. And he may not be unpolished for long. You know, I don't think he's very far off. Every time he steps on a PGA Tour venue, it's the first time. Right? These are brand new reads on the greens everywhere you go. So it doesn't surprise me to see a little inconsistency in his putting performance from a statistical standpoint. So yeah, I think that the ceiling is very high for him. I like him this week. I think it's a good setup for him. He's going to come with a little bit of risk. He's going to come with more risk than a Rory McIlroy or a Corey Connors, probably even more risk than a Taylor Pendrith this week. But his ability to go out there and even win this thing is clearly, very clearly there.
Let me clean up a couple of items before we move on. Taylor Pendrith has made 8 albatrosses in his career, which is
crazy,
seemingly impossible, but we'll trust him on that. I found the newspaper article that I was referring to. I was a little bit off, but the newspaper article that I was referring to is from 1929. It's the New York Times. They listed every handicap for every amateur in Massachusetts. Okay. The Massachusetts Golf Association listed out every amateur player's handicap. Imagine that showing up in the newspaper, by the way. By name, by handicap. 365 golfers held a handicap in 1929 in Massachusetts amateurs. Francis Ouimet was scratch. He was the only scratch golfer. 3 guys were a 1, 8 were a 3, and it goes down to 8. There were 170 golfers who were holding an 8 handicap. And
wow.
That's every registered amateur in Massachusetts in 1929.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, back in that time, you know, golf was kind of the blue bloods were playing it. It's kind of the elitist folks, and the professional golfers were the riffraff. So if so they were maybe a few of the guys turned pro and stuff, and were trying to play money games and that sort of thing. So, but I can understand that. And golf courses weren't manicured like they are nowadays. You're basically playing off barren lies and stuff all day long. And bunkers back then were a penalty area, no rakes. Remember, So if you hit it in a bunker, you were having to see your hands full. They weren't clearing up heel prints and stuff like that. So yeah, you were good back in the day if you were a scratch.
Play in the morning.
Play in the morning. Tom says, slow news day. Tom, where else in the world are you getting a transition from Luke Clanton to
There you go, Ray.
Thank you. How many amateurs had handicaps in 1929 in Massachusetts? Nowhere else in the world are you getting that. I'll also give you this one. Here's a little bit of trivia before we get to our best bets. I was looking at our numbers, our podcast numbers. Let's play closest without going over. What percentage of listeners listen on Apple Podcasts? So, Mark, that would be you can listen on Spotify, you can listen on a variety of places. What percentage of our users listen on Apple Podcasts?
Are you including YouTube in this or not?
I am not. This is just audio, and this is just only audio, not people who watch on YouTube.
40%.
Okay, 40% is Mark's guess.
I will say 23%.
Mark wins. The actual answer, 65%. It's very popular.
Wow. Okay.
65%. There's apparently a big two. Apple, 65%. Spotify, 22%. So that's already 87%. And then just a bunch of little ones the rest of the way.
Yeah. See, I'm not a big Apple podcast guy. I'm a Spotify guy. So I'm like, what? Who's on Apple Podcasts?
Yeah.
But I get it.
From the numbers from my show, it's Apple Podcasts is the highest by a long ways. Yeah.
Jordan says he watches strictly on YouTube so he can see us beauties.
Yeah, baby.
The YouTube gang is here. Thank you very much. I love that. All right. The grid for this week. So if you've never seen us do this, here's what we do. We pick a matchup, a finishing position, and two separate outrights. We have found the winner somewhere on this grid in every week but one since we've started doing this.
Yeah.
I think is the streak that we're on.
The second cut is way greater than the first cut at picking winners. Big time.
The second cut is twice as good than the first cut. Simple math. So we've got our picks in. Greg took the perfect grid as far as we've ever seen it taken last week, which was a
Shane Lowry. Dang you.
Beautiful sweat.
Can't lay.
It's a beautiful sweat. We've got the grid for this week, Mina, whenever you're ready. Thank you kindly. All right. So we've got, mama, we've got a lot going on here. Let's start with our matchups. And Mark, why don't you start us off first here?
Well, from what I've heard, this is a big boy golf course in terms of distance. And if you can hit it a long way, it's advantageous. And I'm a fan of Rasmus Højgaard, but that doesn't take a lot of doing. Everyone knows that. Both he and Nikolai are great, but Rasmus just has another gear. 190 plus ball speed when he lets it have it. And so I figure him over Eric Cole was a useful bet given what I know. So plus 100, I'll take Rasmus over Eric this week.
Yeah, Rasmus, let it fly. I think we talked about this a little bit. Patrick and I followed Rasmus at the PGA Championship playing with Rory. And
I made you do it. Remember that?
It is special. It is really, really special stuff. Greg, you're picking on a Corn Ferry Tour guy. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I have always had a belief that it's a different animal when you go to the PGA Tour, whether you're coming from the DP World Tour, the Corn Ferry Tour, wherever else you're coming from. When you get to the PGA Tour, it's just simply a different animal. And I haven't seen very much evidence from John Kiefer that he's not a proven commodity on the PGA Tour. Max Homa is. I know Max Homa's going through a slump, but Max Homa has had two of his best rounds on the PGA Tour this year, right? He's had some phenomenal rounds, and Max Homa's an underdog to Johnny Kiefer, right? I mean, John Kiefer has a great record on the Corn Ferry Tour. It's very impressive, but no PGA Tour experience. This is a different animal. I'm saying welcome to the show. Max Homa shouldn't be. I wouldn't have picked on him if Max Homa wasn't the dog, but come on.
John Kiefer, for those of you scratching your head and wondering who the hell that is. Baylor kid. I think he gets his Korn Ferry Tour card from PGA Tour U. He's played about 12 events on the Korn Ferry Tour. He's got a runner-up in Panama, a 4th in Bogota, a 6th at the Club Car. He won the Veritex Bank, finished 2nd in Knoxville.
And he's going to be the first guest on the Second Cut podcast when he whips Homer this week, and Greg has to ask all the questions.
I'll be extremely impressed if he does, unless Homer has a really bad day. By the way, there's a question in the chat from Tom. Has Max have a caddy? Apparently, he will have Lance Bennett on the bag this week. Bennett was working for Michael Thor Bjornsson. This is a tweet from Adam Schupak, by the way. Bennett was working with Michael Thor Bjornsson, but Thor hired JJ Jakovic as his full-time caddy. Right. JJ had been on Colin Morikawa's bag until Joe Griner left Max Homa for him.
This is the caddy shuffle.
Yes. But Lance Bennett, very experienced caddy.
He's worked for Tiger Woods.
He's worked for Tiger Woods.
Lance is good.
The other thing is, so JJ joins Michael Thor Bjornsson, and then Thor Bjornsson withdraws this week. He's not playing this week. Wrist injury. So that will have to wait another day. I went with Luke Clanton. You're going to see his name on my thing.
Rick. Say it again.
Luke. Oh gosh. Okay. Luke Clanton, who has a T in his name, over Keith Mitchell. I can't pick him if I can't pronounce it. And I'm in. It's a small sample size, but it's not that small. Unbelievable off the tee. Finds the center of that crunches the golf ball. What does that say?
Clanton over Mitchell. I was looking at that one too, by the way. I made a note. Yeah.
Yes. Mark gave us his sticky note on camera if you're just listening. And Keith Mitchell is very good in opening rounds. We'll see if that continues, but has struggled much of this year outside of round 1. Finishing positions. Greg, you get first crack here, please.
Yeah, there are a couple that I was very interested in. I like the way that Cam Young is trending, not just because he got into the U.S. Open yesterday. I like it anyway. 2 top 25s in his last 3 starts. His driver's starting to look a little better. His ball striking metrics, which were terrible, I should say, are starting to look a little better. He's having a much better putting season than he did last year. And I'm starting to see the Cam Young, the rookie Cam Young model, great driver, great putter. I'm starting to see that come into play. I think that's going to be valuable this week. I got him top 20 at plus 210.
I went with Nappin Sappin, but only the Nap portion of this. Jake Knapp, top 20 at 3-1. Let it fly, big man. Go out there, let it fly.
Love it.
Go find it, wedge it up there, roll some putts in. I am all about talent. Birdies are better. I don't care how raw you are. I don't care. This is just go get this place. Jake Knapp, top 20 at plus 300. And Mark, I looked at this guy. I looked at yours. What did you get?
I got Harry Hall for a top 20. Look, Harry to me is known for the short game. He's a wonderful putter, but he can hit it a long ways off the tee. He's a powerful guy. But get this, he's made 8 cuts in a row. He's had a string of like top T20, a T19, top 10 here recently. And he's just quietly going about the business ever since he connected with Butch Harmon. And he's out there in Vegas spending time with Butch. Butch is doing the golf swing whispering stuff and all that sort of deal. And Harry, each time I watch him play, looks like he's just becoming more and more comfortable. So this feels to me like the perfect place for him to do something like he did at the Black Desert event in the fall last year. Also a big golf course, room to drive it. If you missed the fairway, there was lava there, but he played very well for a top 2 or something, I think, top 5 over there. So Harry Hall this week, plus 160, top 20. I'm there.
Hasn't missed a cut since the Players Championship. Top 20 at Houston, top 20 at Myrtle Beach, top 20 at the PGA Championship. Ever heard of that? And then a T6 at Colonial in his most recent start. Mark, next time you see him out there, ask him what's in his backpack. Harry is a big guy. He's a big guy. He has the biggest backpack I've ever seen in my entire life. And it looks like it is bursting at the seams. I cannot, and then he carries his launch monitor separately. So I know it's not his launch monitor that's in there. What is in that backpack?
I'll do some reconnaissance and I'll find that out.
Thank you.
What I do want to advise to him, because I want your take here. Bryson DeChambeau with the Hogan cap, the old Bryson.
Yeah.
No, he looks way better in a baseball cap. I feel like Harry, who's sporting the nod to Long Jim Barnes, the same Tam O'Shanter hat. I feel like he'll do a lot better in a baseball cap, but we'll see. I've got to work on that some.
It's not a good look. The only thing he has going for him is that he's English. So it's like a little, you could call it cultural. You could be like, oh, it's cute, whatever.
Oh yeah, he's English.
No, you wear those things when they tweed and you're on a links somewhere and the wind's blowing 50 and it's raining. No, not on the PGA Tour. He does have a sweet little like mustache goatee action thing going on.
He does.
He sort of looks like he should be Sherlock Holmes in a way, with a golf club in his hand.
Yes. So he either needs to remove the hat or keep the hat and add a pipe. And then
a single eyeglass.
Yes. A monocle.
A monocle. That's it.
Yes. So one or the other. He can't do what he's doing right now, but he's got to make some change. Two separate outrights here. I'm a little stunned that we didn't get a trio of similar names in the right-hand corner because Mark opted to not play along. He went in a different direction. So Mark, I'm just going to go to you. You've got the two longest shots on the board. What did you pick?
I'm going glorious and free. Jim Nance said for the Nick Taylor winning call a few years ago. Of course, glorious and free is in the O Canada, the Canadian national anthem. And yeah, I just figure, we're moving to a new golf course. They love golf in Canada. I teased this last week. I really liked what I saw out of Nick Taylor, the way he was playing, what he was going through in preparation on the driving ranges. Looks very well organized, great putter. And so he's got some form going into this. Admitted as much to me. So I think Nick at plus 4,500 is a good bet. And then Taylor Pendrith. How about another albatross or two and a whole bunch of birdies? That's what he does. And as I've watched Taylor, he was always the talented guy. And he'd sort of show up and then disappear and show up and disappear. But then after that victory in Dallas 2 years ago now, last year, whenever it was, last year, I think, he just looks like a different player. Way more poised, way more confident, way more organized, making putts when he needs to. And it's like he's taken another step. And I think another step for Pendrith could sort of be to assume the mantle as Canada's leading player in the game, because it's shaping up that he's like that guy, that he's shaping up like he's that guy right now. So how about doing it in front of your fans and your people?
Well, a step up from his recent results would be very good. A T5 at the PGA Championship, a T12 at Muirfield Village. Not much room to improve on those. If you do that, it'll be a very good week for Taylor Pendrith at 28-1. Nick Taylor, 48-1. I'm going to just give one of mine. So I've opted to try to go for the perfect grid here. So the DraftKings offering for this week, the without market, is without Rory, Shane Lowry, Corey Connors, and Ludwig. So I get without those four, and I picked Luke Clanton for that, which I said I will continue to. I'm in on that. My other golfer overlaps with Greg's, so I'm going to cede the stage, Mr. DuCharme. Let us know, or at least let the people know, who we're going with.
Rory McIlroy.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. Look, I have some questions about where Rory is with his game, as I think many do.
Do you? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Where is he? What is the current state of Rory's game? We haven't heard from him
because he had he had a weak couple rounds at the PGA.
Yeah.
He had a couple of Rick. I'm backing Greg on this one, and I'm a big Rory fan. Everybody knows it. But he had a case of the lefts going on at the PGA Championship,
and the truest.
And here's the thing about the left shot off the tee. It's not the left shot that's going to ruin you. It's the fear of the left shot that ruins you, because the opposite, or the anti-left, is a blast. It's like one that flies off to kingdom come down the right-hand side. So yeah, Rory needs to have ironed out that driver issue, because it wasn't just with the driver. It was with some of the iron shots as well. And when he starts missing left, that's when it gets a bit ragged, in my estimation.
Okay. So now, all that being said, he's on my outright card.
Mine too.
He's had time to figure it out, right? So I'm expecting it's fixed. But I feel where Greg was going, is what I'm saying.
So that's why I say that there's some questions. It's very well said, Mark. It wasn't necessarily all that encouraging and like I said, the Truist or the PGA. That being said, he finished tied 7th at the Truist. I think he can play like that and still win. I think he is far and away the best player in this field. And he's never finished outside the top 10 in Canada. So I think there's a very good chance he wins this week, which would just be fascinating. And I hope it happens. And I think this setup, he hit it a long way. The distance, the width, it screams Rory McIlroy to me. So quite frankly, I'm glad all that stuff happened, because we get him at 4.5 to 1 instead of 2.5.
That's right. And also, remember how he was the runaway player of the year?
I was, you know what? I was thinking that the other day, and I wanted to pitch it to you guys. Now, I know you haven't mentioned your other winner, but let's say everything stays as it is, and you got Scheffler with 3 wins, a PGA, Memorial, and Byron Nelson, and you got Rory with the Players, Pebble Beach, and the Masters. Who is the player of the year?
Whoever wins the Tour Championship.
If it ended right now, it's a much better question. If it ended right now, it depends on how you look at it. Okay. You could look at it like rate the wins. Which tournaments would you rather win? In that case, I'd rather have Rory's resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I also think there's a how you win. And when you win by 4, 5, and 8, that's a big statement.
So okay, Greg, you have a vote. Your vote today. There's no Tour Championship. This ends today. Your vote goes to.
If you look at strokes gained total, Scotty is 7, 10, like 3/4 of a shot better per round. It's incredible. Right? He's better in scoring average. He's better just about everywhere. I go Scotty.
Venues matter. Pebble Beach, Ponte Vedra, the TPC Stadium course at Sawgrass, Augusta National, Rory by a nose.
It's Rory. Yes, I agree. I'll break the tie. It's Rory, but there's a lot of golf to be played. There are 2 major championships. There's playoff events. There's a lot, but yes, no longer is Rory the runaway player of the year, because that man, Scotty Scheffler, is lurking. His best friend, Greg, is on your outright card. Who is it?
Sam Burns. Sam Burns at 28 to 1. If it's not Rory, I think there's a pretty good fall off, and there are a lot more questions about everybody behind them. So Sam Burns at 28 feels like it's very live. He's been starting to hit the ball a little better. He's the best putter on the PGA Tour. He has the club head speed. I'm seeing a trend that just is working up and up and up. All top 30 finishes in his last 5 events, and all but 1 are top 20s. So I really like the way Sam Burns is trending.
Yeah, he's been laying down the breadcrumbs. The finishing positions are getting better. The metrics are getting better. I think the venues are getting better for him. It is interesting to see what Sam Burns is doing. He's 28 to 1. Mark, you're off to Canada, my friend.
Yes, I am. Looking forward to it. And I will catch up with you boys on Friday evening and Sunday evening from north of the border.
All right.
Gosh,
don't forget your passport and safe travels.
You know what? Thanks for the reminder. I actually said this to my wife coming back from the airport. I'm like, I got to pack it now, because we don't want to forget that.
No.
Do not forget that. Safe travels. We will see you on Friday night. Mark Immelman.
See you, boys. Take care.
See ya. Whoops. I'm sorry. That was my fault, Armia. Greg, you and I have work to do.
Let's get to it.
We are going to continue this. We've got the fantasy portion of the show. Before we jump into that, there were a couple of questions. Thank you, Mia. From Patreon that I think were better suited for this portion. So Ryan did ask a question about Johnny Kiefer. He says, is Johnny Kiefer a look for this week or the summer in general? He says it feels hard to try to time these Corn Ferry guys coming up and how he compares to some of the recent grads. So this is an interesting time of the year, right? You do get Luke Clanton, you do get Johnny Kiefer, you do get like just a small injection of these guys that might have been in college, plus the guys that have been playing on the Corn Ferry Tour. What's our, like, how do we start assessing these guys for the rest of the year?
I think you got to be a little careful with these guys. I mean, what Johnny Kiefer's done on the Corn Ferry Tour has been great, but there have been a lot of great Corn Ferry Tour players who never panned out on the PGA Tour. So I'm very cautious. Now, this week he's not priced overly high from a fantasy perspective, 7,800. I mean, it's reasonable. I could see him fitting into a lineup, but I wouldn't be going crazy with it. I'm much more cautious when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, to put it into perspective, he's the same price as Kevin Yu and Jake Knapp. Gary Woodland and Justin Rose are $100 cheaper, and Thomas Dietrich and Davis Riley are $100 more expensive. Scott asks a very simple question, and I think it's a valid one. I think it's can be a difficult one for a golf course that we've never seen before. Are there comp courses? Are there other courses that when you look at TPC Toronto, you say, okay, X, Y, or Z could be a decent comp here?
Yeah, there are elements that I look for, right? So I think there's like when it gets to specific elements, I'm expecting a lot of long irons into the greens. So now I'm willing to give a look to the Mexico Open, Vidanta, Farmers. Now, I don't think these are good. They're not similar courses at all, but there's one element you can draw from it. So there are some players that do really well at the Farmers, Houston, maybe Corrales, Punta Cana would be another example. They're these big 7,500 yard golf courses. The thing you got to be careful with is that most of those are par 71 or par 72. So like, let's take Will Gordon, for example. He does really well on these courses typically, and I favor him. I give him a huge bump when there's a high percentage of long iron shots. He's like a specialist. Is that because of par fives? Or is that because of the par fours? Is it a coincidence? I don't know. So that's an element that I'm looking for. And then the other thing that I would use this week is bent grass greens. Do you putt well on bent? This is bent and POA mixed. Beyond that, do you have any, Rick?
No.
Yeah.
I thought what you laid out was the way that I tend to go towards skill set comps instead of course comps.
Yeah.
Obviously there's huge differences between, like you said, a golf course that's in Mexico that could be a resort golf course and one that's going to be played in the suburbs of Toronto, right?
Right. But there's only the United States in between them.
Right. But if you're only looking for things that are very specific to the course, that narrows it down a lot for a lot of courses, right? So to take it to a skill set level, I like to do that as well. What rewards X off the tee? Does it reward Y on approach or what? So that I think that you laid it out beautifully there.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing I might add, if you're coming into course comps, like I may look at a designer like Pete Dye. Okay, it's so-and-so player loves Pete Dye. It has like you got to be comfortable with the visuals. There are specific skill sets that are required of you. That would be an example of a real course comp. But beyond that, you're right. It's skill sets.
Okay. Well, listen, let's continue this conversation as we do every single week. We've got your golfer of the week. We've got the tier breakdown where we can just pick out a few more names to discuss along the way. And we're going to start with the guy that you cannot live without. I will admit, I didn't see this coming. I'm excited to talk about it. Who is it?
Yeah, last week I went with Scotty Scheffler because it was just so obvious. Like,
that looked easy, didn't it?
Yeah, it worked out. I don't feel quite as strongly about Rory McIlroy, so I couldn't validate Rory earning golfer of the week right now. Although if you really interrogated me on it, looked at my DFS lineups, you'd probably say, okay, that Rory's the golfer of the week. Okay. But I wanted to make it a little more fun. I went with Sam Burns.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly impressed. I'm going to try to get Rory and Sam Burns into these. Sam Burns is 9,300 on DraftKings.
Okay.
I think there's, an outright market that's very possible for him. I think you could look into top 10, top 20 kind of things. Although I'd probably go a little more aggressive with Sam Burns. Like, we're going to know if this is a good week pretty soon on. And I'm just so impressed with these finish positions. After the Masters, you're talking tied 13th at the Heritage, tied 5th at the Byron Nelson. Another course with a lot of long irons, by the way. Tied 30th at the Truist, 19th at the PGA Championship, a lot of long irons. Tied 12th at the Memorial, another big golf course. Right. The strokes gain metrics, especially approach, have been fairly weak, but it looks to me like they're getting better. On rickrungood.com, they're not deep red anymore. They're getting very pale. And then on the short game side, you got dark green all year. And he's so consistent with his putting, it's become a floor, which is very rare.
So I'll say this. This has been like, it's like 10 events, which are fascinating. The first 5, he was horrible from tee to green, putted like the best putter in the world, missed most of those cuts, didn't have any good finishes, still putting like the best player in the world, has flipped the tee to green play to be positive in 4 out of his last 5. And even in all 5, he has good results. 13th at Harbor Town, 5th at Byron Nelson, 30th at the Truist, 19th at the PGA, and then the 12th place finish at the Memorial. I'll tell you what, I think I'm just about ready. I think I'm in.
He's a rare guy, in my opinion, where, he can go, he can oppose the model. Like, if I see this stat profile with no name attached, I will not go with it unless there is a name attached. And that name's got to be like Sam Burns. It's a rare thing. Maybe Patrick Cantlay. In years past, I've been a little less, paid less attention to his iron play because he's so reliable everywhere else. Sam Burns fits that mold. And because of the distance, I think automatically you're going to see an uptick in his off the tee performance. I think he'll gain strokes significantly off the tee this week. And I like a driver putter combo here.
Driver putter combo goes a long way. Sam Burns looking like he's getting back into form. He's the golfer of the week for Mr. DuCharme. The 9K range are 3 golfers that, as you can probably imagine at this point, we have spent some oxygen on. It's Sam Burns, it's Rory McIlroy, it's Taylor Pendrith. Greg, I'll just talk about this from a fantasy perspective because you said, hey, can I get Rory McIlroy and Sam Burns into into one lineup, excuse me. That leaves you with $7,200 remaining. It's not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not the best though this week.
Yeah, you'd have to, find do you trust a Jeremy Paul or a Matthew Pavone or like something like that?
Yeah, they're like Will Gordon would be another example.
Okay.
I think he's at like 6,500 or something.
66. That would get you back to 3 spots remaining, 7,400.
Okay, now I could maybe throw we'll save some for but I might be able to get back to the 8K range. And there's a lot of 7K that I really do like. So if you do that, you're going to be uncomfortable with at least one guy. But it makes up such a big portion of the field. And I think there's so much win equity with these 3 players. I really think these 3 players is where the winner comes from. So I think it's worth it.
Pendrith has played better than I would have thought.
Yeah. He's hung in. The PGA was great. The Memorial was great. Like he really hung in there and has been hitting it. He's been leaning on his ball striking.
You could conceivably get all three of them and Will Gordon, but you'd have $6,300 remaining. So you'd have to play like
Kevin Kisner,
or I guess I'd prefer Rafa Campos or Mike Weir. No.
Can you play five guys?
Can I just punt that last spot? It would get tough after that. I want to ask you about the longest day in golf, because when we get to the $8,000 range, you have two golfers here. One of them I will look up, but I'm like fairly confident got in. And the other one, I believe, was in a playoff to get in. And okay, so he got in and then okay, yes, I was correct. All right, so let's see it, Mina. Chris Gotterup got in. Kurt Kitayama lost in a playoff and is a second alternate out of Springfield. Before we even talk about these two, does anything that happened yesterday influence any of your decision-making for this week?
No, but it like helps prove the point. You know, it's one thing to click the button. It's another to have to actually talk about it. And so it's nice to have some extra ammunition in there. Like, yeah. And he qualified for the US Open. So I like that, but ultimately, no.
Well, Chris Gotterup qualified for the US Open. He got in Summit, New Jersey. That makes sense. He's a New Jersey guy, right? 71-65 alongside James Nicholas, Roberto Diaz, and Ben James. What is it about Gotterup? Oh, I'm looking at his profile. I know exactly what it is about Gotterup.
Yeah. Well, one, I think like he has a very unique set of skills.
Yes.
Okay?
And he will find you.
That he will find you. But it has been completely unused for his entire PGA Tour career, except for one win, which has kept him out here at Myrtle Beach, which is looking more and more like a big hitters kind of golf course.
Yeah.
Gotterup and Fox are your two winners. Anyway, he's really long and he's starting to find out where the golf ball is actually going. And so this talent level that he has, this ability that we saw in 2022 when he got into the US Open is like really here now. And now you're seeing 18th at Corrales, tied 12th at the Zurich, tied 15th at the Byron Nelson, tied 13th at Myrtle Beach, tied 28th at the Charles Schwab. Now all of a sudden we have some consistency. Yeah. And so when you combine those recent performances with the US Open qualification,
that's 36 holes. That's 2 more rounds.
Yeah. Add that into the mix. And by the way, he's done that all losing strokes putting.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're a good putting week away from a top 5. When you look at the course fit and the skill set, it's a good match.
Yeah. 5 straight finishes, whereas worst finishes at 28th, and the other 4 are top 18s. Also, if you go back 2 more starts, you get another T18. That was in Houston. This is probably the best and most consistent stretch of his young career.
Yes.
Kurt Kitayama also makes it onto your short list here in the $8,000 range. Tell me why.
Well, you have a T5 at the Byron Nelson. Okay, very specific skill set. Tied 22nd at the Charles Schwab. The PGA didn't go his way largely because of poor putting, and he actually gained strokes even though he missed the cut at the PGA.
Yeah.
Which is a very rare occasion. So I'm looking at a guy that's been hitting the ball really well over his last 3 starts. He has some good finishes, and through his career, places like Mexico, places like the Byron Nelson, a place like Houston, although it didn't go great for him this year, he finished tied 39th there. These are the kind of golf courses he excels on. I think he'll have some room off the tee to air it out. Those longer irons into the greens work well for him. And, you know, both of these guys, the price is a little higher than I'd like, but I think that's really just a function of the field. And they probably come into play in lineups where you go away from Rory or where you go Rory and then you drop down to this kind of range.
The driver for Kitayama continues to be a weapon, has started to plug the holes in other areas of his game. The putter can still be troublesome at times, but he's gained there in 2 out of his last 3. He's picked up strokes on approach in 2 out of 3, and the third one was basically dead on tour average. So yeah, I see where he's starting to put things into order. The 7K range makes me think you're lying to me, Greg, because 2 of these guys made the U.S. Open qualifying yesterday.
Yes, but they've done other things as well. Okay. Cam Young, who qualified, has been like we've talked about him already a little bit. I'm starting to see his rookie year skill set come back, and at 7,500, I'm really comfortable with that price. Like, I'm more comfortable with Cam Young at 75. I probably put Cam Young and Chris Gotterup and Kurt Kitayama on a very similar level in my power rankings. Yet Cam Young 7,500. So I think there's a lot of value to be had there. And I love the skill set, and he's been putting very well. He's 26th on tour this year. That leaves you with a lot of upside, a lot of potential on this golf course. You can see there's very clearly a theme. Then we go to Matty Schmid, who's also at 7,500, also has this specific skill set, but he has been, he has 3 top 5 finishes. One of them's a second in his last 5 starts. You got a high miscut risk, but he's also done it with his ball striking. You're talking 8 events in a row where he's gained strokes on approach.
Which is crazy because that runner-up finish was like the putter was, which people are going to remember that, and they're not going to realize he's actually a very, very good ball striker.
Right. And see, this is the thing. Like Tom says in the chat, I don't trust a bad putter to start putting well. I need some results. I think that's a very fair thing to say. I'm not going to take somebody leaning on the putter. I'm willing to take a bad putter if he's performing well. Like if the results column say yes, and the putting is bad, that leaves a lot of room for growth, right? A lot of room for Matty Schmid to finish second at the Charles Schwab Challenge. That's how you arrive at something like that. And you catch him on a hot putting week, and all of a sudden you got something. If it's not a hot putting week, you have something to fall back on. So that's kind of the theory when it comes to guys who aren't putting well, in my opinion. Let's get to Mark Hubbard.
Yeah, because he doesn't necessarily fit the same model that a lot of these other guys do.
No. Now, this always happens, right? We get a fingerprint on what kind of golfer is going to do well, and the winner may fit that model, and a number of the guys in the top 10 do, but a lot of guys don't. So I don't want to handcuff myself to that. And what I'm seeing out of Mark Hubbard is some really much better play. Like the middle of this year, there was a stretch where he missed 5 cuts in a row, missed 7 in 8 events.
It was really bad. Yeah,
it was really bad, but it's better now. Tied 12th down at Corrales, missed the cut because of his partner at the Zurich. I don't even know who his partner is.
I was going to say that's a bold statement.
Then tied 5th at the Byron Nelson, tied 7th at the Myrtle Beach Classic, tied 28th at the Charles Schwab. Now, we don't have strokes gain metrics for Corrales or Myrtle Beach or the Zurich, but in the events we do have strokes gain data for, we're seeing a guy that's gaining strokes across the board. I think you could surmise that he's been performing like that in all these events, because the events with no strokes gain data, like Myrtle Beach, he finished in the top 10. So I think things are looking pretty good for Mark Hubbard, and he qualified for the U.S. Open.
Yes, he did, out of that Ontario. So good things in Canada. He qualified out of that Ontario qualifier as well. All right. Well, if we need to get down into the depths of this field, we need to get down into the 6K range. Maybe we want Rory McIlroy and Sam Burns, and here's an opportunity to capture who, Greg?
Yeah, I can't stand this range. It's just such a guess. So here's I got 2 names here for you, and I'll give you a couple of guys you could take a flyer on that are lower down, because both of these guys are at 6,900. I don't really think that's fair. Antoine Rosner, has been very consistent, hasn't missed a cut since the American Express. He's been pretty good in the ball striking categories. I like what I've seen there, right? He's not lean. The putter, quite frankly, hasn't been very good. But perhaps we catch a really good putting week and then we could have something substantial. Otherwise, I think we got a guy that can go make a cut. So that's one. Max McGreevy, very similar. Been a cut maker. I know he missed the cut at the PGA Championship. That's a different animal in my book.
I don't care about that at all.
Right. Not at this level. So we're looking at a guy that's gained strokes both off the tee and approaching the green in each of his last 3 events, albeit it's been mild. He seems to be playing pretty well tee to green. So there's like legitimate reason to look at those guys from a statistical standpoint and play them. Everybody else is like, we're really I'd be grasping at straws to tell you why to play anybody else.
Boy, yeah. The best thing I could say about most of these guys is that Matthew Pavone played 3 good rounds 2 starts ago, and that was like the best thing he's done.
Yeah,
in a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, you could add him to this graphic because we have the Tour Eiffel.
That's right. Yes.
So nice work there, Mina. A couple other guys I wrote down that I would consider playing. I'm not even going to give you any reasons. Mac Meisner, Will Gordon, Thomas Rosenmuller. If I was going to throw a dart to get Rory McIlroy and Sam Burns in the same lineup, those would be the areas I'd look.
Are you telling me that you wouldn't play? Hold up. Cougar Collins, who's got the rec specs?
If I wanted to get Rory, Burns, and Pendrith all together, I'd play Cougar Collins.
There you go. $6,100, 25-year-old Canadian who has played twice on the PGA Tour, Punta Cana both times, missed the cut both times. But
give him a chance.
Strong name, strong face.
Cougar Collins. My goodness.
I'm looking to see if there is anything else. Kevin Velo just made the U.S. Open. How about the fall from grace for Gordon Sargent? $6,500 was the next best thing. He's not even playing on. He wasn't even making the squad at Vandy.
No, literally not playing. Not playing in competition.
Right, not in the starting 5.
The guy was the talk of the town at the Masters 2 years ago.
Yeah,
he's riding the bench in college.
Yeah.
And he's 6,500.
He has a PGA Tour card coming.
Yes. Under the radar. Like Jackson Coyven. Well, we're going to get some of these guys. I'm very curious. I hope Gordon can turn it around because he's extremely talented. But there is evidence that he's been playing poorly, even though he hasn't been playing on the PGA Tour.
Indeed. Anything else, Gregors, before we get out of here?
I think we've covered it, Rick. Like one of our viewers said, it's a slow news day.
Listen,
I think we're in good shape.
We've done 90 minutes of storylines, fantasy. You got a course preview. You got a history lesson. You learned about things from 100 years ago and the exchange rate between $175 of USD to Canadian. We just covered it all. So I think we could just call it, I guess.
I think we can call it too.
Okay. Well, we'll be back on Friday, halfway home for the Canadian Open, and Sunday, of course, for the final round recap. And then guess what? We're going to declare it U.S. Open week.
The third major of the year. It makes me sad already.
I know.
But we've had Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler win all the big events so far this year. I can't wait to figure out and talk through if that's going to continue.
I think there's a good chance it does.
I'll give you my dream scenario before we go.
All right.
Scotty wins the U.S. Open.
Yep.
Rory wins the Open.
If that happens, cancel the rest of the year, and those two play just 30 rounds of match play against each other for the rest of the year. for all the purses. Like, I would watch that.
We're playing for $20 million at 1 round match play at TPC Southwind.
Yeah.
And then next week we're going to Caves Valley and playing for $20 million again.
That would be so sick.
Now, if they started to do that, Scotty Scheffler could get to $1 billion in official money.
Oh yeah, he'd get to $1 billion real fast. All right. Wow. That would be a year. 2025 would be a year to remember.
We'll see.
All right. Big thanks to producer Mina. She does all the hard work behind the scenes. Greg DuCharme. He's available at The Real GFD. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The Second Cut. We'll catch you next time.